All right, everyone, it's 10:02. I think we should get started with the meeting. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. All right, so first up, we're just going to call this to order. It's 10:02. We could start with a roll call. There it is.
Hey, Daryl, you're muted.
Daryl, you're muted.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm just talking away here. Thanks for letting me
Okay,
know.
I was wondering. I'm like, maybe he's still pulling the stuff up. So
Nope. Anyway, as I was saying to myself, apparently, the link to the sign-in form is on the meeting page. The link to the meeting page is in the chat window. So please do sign in there, even if you're a voting member or if you're not a voting member. But for the voting members, we'll do the roll call now. For CCI, we have Barb Kirkmeyer, Mike Wallace, or Marie Madrigal. Okay, nothing heard. For CML, we have Megan Dollar. Anyone from CML? Nothing heard. We did hear Cheryl Garcia earlier. At-large member, we have Matthew Ruggles or Luke Adams. Matthew or Luke? Nothing heard. Tim Kunkelman told me he wasn't going to be able to be here today, but said that Tim Goodwin might be on for him. Tim, are you on?
I am on.
Thank you. For other BESP representative, Mary Jane Rasher?
Yes, I'm on. Thank you.
Thank you. And I heard from Wes Horn. He's on mute because he's driving. Darla Joseph I saw on the call. Jared Hilsendegger? Jared told me he might be late today, but he's hoping to join. Monica Aiken?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, Monica. First CLEC VoIP representative, Ray Paddock or Lindsay Carr?
Yep, Ray's here.
Thank you, Ray. Second CLEC or VoIP representative, Jay Slater, Aaron Harris or Erica Stevens?
Yes, Jay Slater's on.
Thank you, Jay.
Hey, Daryl, this is Jared with Verizon. I couldn't get unmuted, but I'm here.
Oh, great. Thank you for joining.
Yep.
911 representative, Daniel Calderon or Susan Myers? Nothing heard. 911 representative, Danette Martin?
Here, good morning.
Thank you, Danette. 911 representative, Jeremy Duncan or Jennifer Kirkland. I did see Jennifer. Is Jeremy on as well?
Jennifer's here and Jeremy will not be.
Okay. Kimberly Culp I saw on. Jackie Reynolds or Amy Book?
This is Jackie. I'm on.
Thank you, Jackie. Beth Dobransky?
I'm here. Good morning.
Thank you, Beth. Bruce Romero? I think I saw him.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, Bruce. Felicia Librand or Paula Nall? Nothing heard. Jeff Irvin I saw. Connie Johnson?
I'm here.
Thank you, Connie. Deanie Shin or Shannon Brand? Nothing heard. We probably need to get a new representative for Denver. Anyone from Denver 911 on? Okay, I will follow up with that.
Deanie Shin, I'm here for Douglas.
Oh, thank you, Deanie.
Thank you.
Vicki Pickett is here. Scott Newman or Tina Bonetta?
Good morning. And Scott will be on late.
Thank you, Tina. Sean Shearer or Brandy Seaton?
Sean Shear's here.
Thank you, Sean. Mandy Stolzheimer I saw, as well as Matt Gage. Carl Stevens, Tom Holman, or Monica Millions. I think I saw Carl.
Carl's here.
Thank you, Carl. Patty West, Ted McEldowney, or Christine Mason?
Patty's on.
Hi, Patty. So we have 80% in attendance. So,
Daryl, did you hear?
hello? Yep, I got you. You're here.
God.
Are you okay? Anyway, we have 80% in attendance. That means we do have a quorum. We also have a super quorum, although I don't think we need it today. But there we go.
Okay. All right. Next up is the approval of the minutes from the July 2020 meeting. Way to get a chance to review the minutes. Have any questions, corrections, comments? Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Jeff Irvin, I move that we accept.
Thanks, Jeff.
This is Cheryl. I second it.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. Any discussion? Rather than saying all in favor, we'll say any opposed. Please speak now.
This is Cheryl. Can people say their name when they speak?
Sure. This is
Yes.
the chair, Vicky Pickett. I'm just doing the approval of the minutes right now. So anyone opposed to approving the minutes? Okay, hearing none. Approval of minutes passes. So up next, we've got the presentation on what 3 words from Isabella Convertini. I hope I said that right.
This is
That's
Daryl.
perfect, Vicky.
Okay.
There you go. Isabella, do you know how to take control of the screen, or do you have a presentation for us?
I do. Let me try and do it. Yep, I can do it. Perfect.
And just for the record, I think Isabella is the most distant participant that we've ever had in a 911 task force meeting. She is joining us from Italy.
Awesome.
So thank you for joining us in
Yes.
the evening.
Thank you for making the time for me. So good morning, everyone. Yes, I'm based in Italy. Thank you to COVID, really. But usually in the UK, where I am a director of What 3 Words. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, perfect. So what I would like to do today is really give you a quick overview of what 3 Words is. I've spoken to a few of you, actually. I do recognize some faces and some names, so it's nice to see some familiar faces. And then really go into on a demo, really, and showing you how what 3 Words will be used in your PSAPs, 911 centers, and by search and rescue task forces, for example. So, but I want to start with a story. So this is really the story of Jason, a very experienced kayaker, and that's actually experienced in outdoor sports overall. He lives in Scotland, and a few months ago, he decided to go alone on his kayak on a lake in Scotland. At some point, the weather got rough, and it nearly capsized twice. It lost really the sense of direction, couldn't really tell where he was. It was starting to get cold, and it was starting to get really dark. He called 911. And at that moment, actually 999, which is the equivalent in the UK. And the only way he had really to explain where he was in that moment and get some rescue was to open up the What 3 Words app on his phone and tell the 3 words of the exact location where he was. And so a few minutes later, the helicopter came and rescued him. And this is just one of many stories that we really hear about on a daily basis. Some of them are more, let's say, they're more interesting, or they are a bit more of a rescue story. Some others are smaller use cases, but really on a daily basis, we hear What 3 Words being used by 911 communication centers and similar in different countries. What 3 Words, however, is not really being created with emergency services in mind. We had no idea that our little app could be useful for emergency services. The problem that we wanted to solve 7 years ago now, when we got funded in the UK, was really to address this problem that traditional addresses, so street numbers, street names, zip codes, are not always available, and they're not always precise enough for all the different types of use cases that we have in the 21st century. So I'm sure that this would all resonate with you. There are many places outdoors, specifically like lakes and forests and campsites, where you do have a very general address, but you don't have an address for each spot on a campsite or each spot on a trail when you're hiking. In the same way, if you're on a highway and with not landmarks, very, very difficult to describe where you are. And surely you can find the mileage sign, but if you are far away from it, really difficult to know where you are. Big events, big festivals, those that we used to have back in the days, another good example of usually one address for the entire festival site, but different locations where people might be. And a final example, farmland. This is pretty big in the UK, but also in many states in the US, where you, at best, you get the address of the front door or somehow the farm building. There are many barns and there are different fields, and all of them don't have a traditional address. Now, we do know that there is a very specific way and very precise way to pinpoint points anywhere. And that's through coordinates. And you can see some examples of different formats of coordinates and GPS location and lat long. Now, this works perfectly well whenever we have two machines, two computers, two phones communicating locations among each other. But whenever we have a human being, someone like me, having to communicate, to remember, to write, or to tell someone a long string of 16 characters, including points and minuses and pluses and eastings and northings, which I don't really understand what they mean, it becomes complicated and quite prone to error. And so the idea of WhatThreeWords is absolutely simple. It's just, can we find an easier way for anyone to communicate very precise locations, even when a traditional address is not available? And so the general idea was to divide the world into a grid of 3 by 3 meters or 10 by 10 foot squares. So the entire world, oceans and landmass, is covered by this grid of little squares. And each one of these squares is been assigned a unique and fixed address, which is made up of 3 words of the dictionary. So for example, in this picture, you see gazed across like, and that's the only square in the world, and there are 57 trillion of these tiny 10 by 10 foot squares. It's the only square with that address. So it's uniquely identified by that 3-word address. And clearly, behind the 3-word address, there are coordinates. So our app, our website, our API can convert 3-word addresses into coordinates and coordinates into 3-word addresses. So I will show you in a second with a live demo, hopefully, if technology helps me. But we do have apps for Androids and iPhones, which are free, also free of advertising. And we do have map sites, so a portion of our website is just this map, where people can find 3-word addresses. They can also find the location that corresponds to 3-word addresses. The entire system is available in over 40 languages. The idea is that this can really be a global addressing system. So wherever I am, I can use this system in my language, in the language that I can feel comfortable with. So for example, if I'm traveling and I'm in a country, let's say even Germany, which is not even that exotic, where I have no idea how to read an address, I can find the address of my restaurant using WhatThreeWords and using my language, even if I'm having to input that into a navigator or into an Uber app. And that square will have an address, a 3-word address unique in each one of those 40+ languages. We do work around the world with a breadth of different organizations. So there are companies that are sharing WhatThreeWord addresses with customers, the Lonely Planet, hotels, travel guides. There are companies and apps that are enabled to be used with WhatThreeWords. For example, if you want to order a Domino's pizza in some countries, you can use the WhatThreeWord address where you are. So even if you are in a park, in a specific spot, you can get your pizza delivered exactly in that spot. And then there are companies that are using WhatThreeWords to make their operations more efficient. Asset tracking, incident reporting, for example, reporting potholes or damaged street furniture. So this just to give an example of the type of companies that we work with, and also to explain how it is that we don't charge emergency services. It's simply because our business model is based on charging for our technology. Big companies, they use the technology at scale to really gain a commercial benefit. So this is an example of what was being used, for example, in parks, which is really, really common. Up here, it's a park in the UK where they decided to even create physical signs. So when people get lost or they don't have maps, they run out of battery on their mobile phones, they can actually see the true address where they are. We also have a partnership with the Arizona State Parks and Trails where they have where they're using WhatThree for all the entrances and soon trails and facilities on the park. This is an example that was on the slide before. We have a partnership with Mercedes, which is one of those example big customers that use WhatThree at scale. So if you have one of the new Mercedes, you can enter your car and simply say to the navigation system, take me to Apple Banana Spoon, and they will take you directly to that 10 by 10 foot square. And this is just an example of the Lonely Planet in Mongolia. And we have that for a few countries where addresses are really a problem. They just don't exist in the form they were used to. But I'll get to, and by the way, more than happy to answer any question. Unfortunately, while I'm presenting, I can't see everyone. But if there is any question, please let me know. And otherwise, there will be surely some time at the end. So I'll move now into a bit more how WhatThree can be used by emergency services. And I was mentioning that we didn't have any clue that our app could be useful. So in the UK, for example, where we started, there is automatic mobile location, same as in the US. So when you call 911, in many cases, they do get some sort of location where you are. And so in our ignorance, not being experts at all, now we're becoming a little bit, we just thought that clearly once you call 999, they know exactly where you are. They don't need WhatThree. And the reason why we learned that it's actually not the case all the time is that someone from a police department in the UK reached out and actually told us, I know WhatThree from my outdoors adventures, going mountain biking and really finding it useful, but I really think that it could be useful in our communication centers and dispatch centers. It's like we don't always get accurate locations. Sometimes it's several miles or even a mile, and that might not always be enough. So just to give you some examples of how WhatThree or type of use cases that we see popping up over and over again. Again, unfortunately, I used to live in California for a few years, and so like seeing what's happening now and happens every year, and I know that's common in a few states with all the wildfires really breaks my heart, but signaling the exact position of fires, that's one very common use case. The other one, there seems to be quite a few accidents happening on water, rivers, lakes, people getting lost, not having enough signal, or not really being able to describe where they are, or not finding their way back. Road accidents, that's a really common one. Again, for the reason that sometimes you're in a stretch of roads where you really there are no landmarks and it's really hard to describe. And again, sometimes you might not even have connection. Any sort of outdoors activity is quite common. People like Jason, that they think they are experts and they are really experienced, but they are probably not so much. Or things happen, bad weather conditions, and again, hiking, mountain biking, anything that has to do with outdoors living, going into state parks, lots of usage of WhatThree. I'm not necessarily related super strictly with 911, but a use case that is connected is really organizing and planning attendance to big events. So if you have police, ambulances, and fire departments having to coordinate among each other on where to position themselves, for example, sometimes they use different systems, and WhatThree can be just a common language to communicate location. And just anyone can download the app on their phone. It's free, and they can share location that way. And so I was mentioning the stories, are really streaming on a daily basis. And quite often, some of them are so big and so interesting that they get to the front page of newspapers. So we have from hikers in Canada to people get saved in car crashes and the likes. So this is a bit more the theory. I want to show now a bit more in practice what happens if someone is calling you and you can't locate them. The location you get automatically might not be good enough, and you want to get a 3-word address. So really the first question is, how do you get a 3-word address from a caller? And just want to mention also that you will probably not actually, for sure, you're not going to need what 3 words all the time. It's another tool in your toolkit. It's a free tool. The barrier to entry is just this training, because there is not much more to learn, really. And I've sent some resources that will be available to you. But if this can help you even once a week or once a month, and will get you there faster and be able to make you able to save a life, it might be worth having that in your toolkit. So there are 2 situations and 2 different ways to get a 3-word address. So I'll stop sharing for a second, because I'm going to be sharing my phone now if I manage. All right. So let's pretend that I'm calling. Oops. And you can't locate me. And so you ask me, do you have what 3 words on your phone? Can you see my phone, by the way? Yes. So I would open the app. So I'm the caller to 911. I'll open the app. I will use the little GPS signal. So you see the blue dots moving. Clearly I'm indoors, and
So
locations and GPS.
it looks like we're just seeing an information about Visor. We're not seeing a.
Oh no, sorry. So that's. I'm used to doing this sort of demos on Zoom, so I'm not really sure what works on Meet, but it looks like my phone doesn't really show up on. So, okay, let's
At the top,
change.
it's 3 dots and it says Visor.
Yeah.
Yeah, Visor is the app that should share my screen and should happen directly, but doesn't look like it's happening. So you'll just have to maybe download the app at some point and look how the experience will look like on a phone. But I'll show you on the computer. All right.
And incidentally, this is Daryl. I did download the app, and it's a very lightweight app, so it's not going to take up a lot of space on your phone. It works very cleanly.
Yeah.
Thank you. So all right. So once you download the app will be an app version of this screen that you're seeing on my computer. And so what you'll do, which I can try and replicate, but it's not very precise on my computer. But so what you'll see, it's a number of squares. So now, here we go. You see a square, you see your GPS location, which is the blue dot, which will be probably moving a little bit. So you refresh it, you wait until it's kind of stable, and you'll be able to read the words up here. So you see the accuracy is not good, because on my computer, what is taken is the coordinates on my IP address rather than my GPS, which is what happens on your phone. But on a phone, that works perfectly fine. And you see, as a caller, the 3 words on your phone on the exact location where you are. So spatula, in this case, morph, Mearns. So on the other hand, so you'll receive these 3 words. By the way, people can also, through the app, share them over text message if necessary. But if you hear the 3 words, you can, so I'll just put, what was that? I'll put actually the 3 words of where I am right now. Let's see that these are the rampages, languages, uplifting, which is what you see if you were able to see my phone. So this is what I told you, like rampages, languages, uplifting. I told to 911. They will just double check. Okay, she said that she's in Italy. Yeah, that sounds about right. I'm typing it right. And you'll be able to see where the location is. So you can use the app, the map in like similar to any other map. So you can zoom out, see roughly what is the closest street. You can move to satellite view, so you can also have a good sense of what type of area this is. And then you can click on share, and you'll be able to see actually the coordinates that correspond to that little 10 by 10 foot square. You can also customize the share settings so that you see the coordinates in the format that you like. So let's say the decimal degrees is what you like. So when you go and share, you'll be seeing the coordinates. So if you need to input these coordinates into a CAD or a mapping system for dispatch, you can simply click on this icon, copy, and then let's say that this is a tab that you have bookmark on your computer, on your monitor. You can then paste the coordinates into the next tab, which might be your CAD or your map or any other dispatch system. And so the coordinates are going of that very specific 3x3 location are going to be sent directly as usual. The app has got actually one big advantage, is that it works offline. So if someone is calling and they don't have any connectivity, they can only just call 911. If the app is already downloaded on their phone, they will be able, as long as the location settings are on, they'll be able to see the 3 words or where they are. And the reason being that the what 3 words really works with GPS, and GPS will work even without connection. Now, not everyone will have the What 3 Words app on their phone, and surely I'm not suggesting that you should ask anyone to download it when they call 911. That's surely not good timing. There is another way to get a 3 word address from someone that is calling, and it is by, if you have the ability, and most from what I'm seeing talking to many PSAPs and many centers, you will have some way to send an SMS. So if you can send an SMS with a link that people can click on, and again, I wish I could show that on my phone, because it's really made for mobile phones. We created an even more lightweight version of the app, which is a really, really stripped down website, which looks a little bit like this. And again, really ugly on a big screen, but it's really a mobile website. So people will receive an SMS from you, and they will click on a link, which is this usfindme.wtw.co. All they see is this blue page. There is no map behind it, because maps really take a lot of data and a lot of time to load. So the only thing they can do is really reading the 3 words to you. Or they can, again, copy. And since they received the message to you, they can also send back a message to you with the 3 words. There's another functionality, this little speaker here. So the speaker also works. I don't know if you could hear that, because it actually went through my headset, but the speaker will speak the words out loud, so you'll be able to hear them on the other side. And so in the same way, once you get the 3 words, you go on this tab, which you will have bookmarks on your monitor just to be ready when it's time to need about 3 words. You'll type the 3 words here that you received, and you'll be able to see the coordinates. And again, copy paste into your CAD as needed. Or if you need to communicate coordinates over radio, again, you can communicate the coordinates, but probably even easier to communicate 3 words. Again, lots easier, a lot quicker. And anyone, anyone in the field can have the app on their phone, so they can receive from you coordinates. Let me stop sharing here, and I'll go back to, just wanted to quickly reshare my presentation.
Isabella, this is Jeff Irvin with the Jefferson County Emergency Communication Authority. I just downloaded the app and was able to, we have text to 911 pretty much ubiquitously throughout Colorado, and I was able to share a message via text to 911 very easily using the messaging in my phone. Worked well. That's
great to hear. Yes, we do have a few PSAPs. I was talking to someone in Arizona, Maricopa County. They're doing exactly that. And I believe that you should be able, or I'm not sure if there are probably different systems, to even create templates. So to save a template already with this little URL, like address. So then again, call takers don't have to remember it, don't have to type it. It's just ready to send. So Jeff, I'm not sure if that sounds about right to you, but that's what I hear.
So
I'm sorry, I was responding back to 911 while you were talking. So what was the question again?
If you can create also templates and save a template already with link to this website. So the call taker will just need to push a button, send the SMS without having to type it all the time.
Yeah, this
And
is
my interest is that in the mountains here, we have sporadic cell coverage, and so if someone can send a text message, oftentimes it'll get through where a call won't. So this is great that that's possible.
Yeah, this site that you send over with SMS, it's actually 7 kilobytes. It's very, very light. We originally created that for the South Africa market, where data is really a big problem. It's so costly that even when they call 911, people would rather die than use their data, or they just don't have data. And so this is, first of all, we managed to have some carriers, some mobile companies zero rate this website because it's so light that it doesn't cost anything to give it for free. But also, again, for anyone who needs to load this site in conditions where there is really little connectivity, this should load with 3G, but they do need a bit of connectivity. The app, again, big advantage is that it does work offline.
Vicki, did you have a comment?
Well, I was just going to say, so I'm in the same county that Jeff works in, and we, I actually asked around because I sent out this stuff about 3 words, probably about 2 months ago, or Gerald, when did you talk about it in the task force meeting? Maybe a couple meetings ago?
That was our last meeting in July.
Was the last meeting. Okay. So anyway, so I sent something out to staff, just kind of letting them know about it. I mean, this is good information. I'm definitely going to provide an update, but they have actually given me feedback that they've used it a few times with backcountry type situations. So it's already become useful. And we do have the capability of saving canned messages in both our text application and our outgoing text application that's called Smart 911. That I think we're going to add to that. I think that'll be really helpful.
Thank you, Vicki, for the feedback. And yes, if you can put me in touch, I would love to hear how it's being used. And it's just very helpful to know what kind of use cases are really relevant for your counties and your market, because they might be quite different from state to state, and also.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think I have a couple of good examples I can send you that we've already had. So it's kind of cool.
That's great. The other thing that I quickly wanted to show you, and then again. Sorry, I used to work. I'm slightly ashamed to say that I used to work for Google until a few months ago, and now I'm already not able to use nearly their products like Google Meets anymore. They will be really ashamed. Here we go. So just to show you that, again, if you at any point you start using the SMS, you think that this is actually something helpful, and you also are in counties where people call, maybe because like it's mountains, it's places where there is no connectivity, and it might be helpful for people to have the app on their phone when they go on a road trip, when they go hiking, mountain biking, and so on a lake. What we do help our partners, our PSAP partners, to do is just communicate on their social media, or when there are in-person events, community events, community preparedness, school events. That's something that our marketing team, so all these nice images that you see is really something that our marketing team provides, and we can, and videos and all sorts of assets. And again, this is really community preparedness. If you feel that it could make your life easier and it could help people take care of themselves and stay safer, we can surely work together to make sure that you have the right copy, you have the right images, you have all the support to do a bit of social media communication or in-person communication. Or something that I would really, really love, honestly, in Colorado is to work with state parks. Again, at the moment, the only park that we have live collaboration with is Arizona State Parks. And we are working with a few other states, but Colorado and I love your state and your state parks. I think it could be a really good place for stronger collaboration with state parks. That's not
Sorry, I'm trying to
me,
figure
I
out
hope.
where that's coming from.
No worries. Also, the app, so again, the WatchWords app, it's free, it's quite light, doesn't have any ads, never had in 7 years, so don't see ads appearing on the app in anytime soon. We don't sell data. This is something that is quite important. I can share our privacy terms and conditions if it's interesting, but we don't share data, so we only use data to deliver the service. And so if, for example, search and rescue teams, it could be, I know that sometimes they receive information over the phone, and they might not have access to all the tools and all the technology that are available at 911. Again, having the app on their phone and communicating locations with WatchRewards could be a useful tool. Or anytime, again, someone needs to receive location over radio rather than automatically, 3 words, probably a lot easier to receive. You can input them with voice or typing, and it's quite easy to share, to navigate, and you navigate using any navigation app that you have on your phone, for example, Google Maps or Apple Maps. And just really final couple of slides, few examples. Again, communication between services could be really that common language, easy to communicate, easy to transmit over radio. Pre-planning operation and big events. Again, hopefully we'll go back to that life where we had football matches and festivals and all sorts of events. And it could be an interesting or useful tool to prepare for events. And just to say that, again, I've shared with Daryl a number of resources. We have even more, and I'm also happy to do specific trainings for your PSAP. There's nothing that you need to create from scratch. We can provide you any sort of videos and webinars and brochures, and we also have merchandise that helps just people and call takers and dispatchers remember that when it's needed, there's also this thing called WatchRewards that they can use. And sometimes having a little sticker can be a good reminder. And public awareness is what I was mentioning before. Again, not need to create anything from scratch. We do have almost everything and happy to create, for example, Colorado-specific imagery or specific imagery for a mountain or a park or an area that you want to do a bit of community preparedness around. I'm going to stop here with my slides. And yeah, I think that maybe, Daryl, if there are any questions, we might have another 5 minutes, I think.
Yes, Isabella, this is Daryl Branson. We got a couple of questions while you were speaking over the chat.
Oh.
One is from Tracy Murdoch. She asks, does the app consider the Z-axis to locate people in multi-floor buildings?
So Tracy, not yet. We could easily add a third dimension, the height, the floor, for example, doing like apple, banana, spoon, -3. The reason why we're not adding that is not our priority in terms of product, is that GPS really doesn't work very well indoors yet. So it wouldn't be very precise, very accurate, and very useful. The moment we are confident about GPS working well indoors, we could definitely add that.
Okay. And then Matthew had a question. Matthew Ruggles had a question. Just wondering if you've received any feedback from people with disabilities. And he says NCIL. I'm not sure what that.
I'm also not sure. In the meanwhile, maybe Matthew can add some information on NCIL. But in the meanwhile, yeah, not necessarily specifically around 911, but we do work with people with disability quite a lot for a few reasons. One is that people with disabilities usually really need to know precisely where they are or where they need to go. And again, having a roughly good address, which might be still a couple of like yards away, is not good enough. National Council on Independent Living. Yeah, not specifically, but generally speaking, already the system, in terms of like as a way of addressing and providing location, is more accessible than a complex address or coordinates, even for people that have difficulties with dyslexia or any other, not just like someone in a wheelchair or someone blind. Our app, and we can always improve, but our app it works quite well with any other software that helps blind people receive location with voice information. And so again, it is quite, we do feel that, and we do hear that people with accessibility needs of different kinds find What Three Words quite beneficial, even in general, to really feel independent and feel quite confident that they're going to the right place and then they know exactly where they are.
Joe Benkert asks, does this work only with GPS or will it work with Google or Apple location services?
So if I interpret the 3 words, so I guess that when we say Apple, Google location services, that what is coming automatically when someone places a call and you're getting automatically through RapidSOS, for example, any other AML. So this works separately and it works with the GPS. So in a way, it's really independent of the carrier, of the mobile company, which sometimes could be an issue. So if you don't have self-connected, again, mostly for the app, by using GPS, it does mean that no matter if you have no connection, no matter what kind of carrier you're using, you can still get the 3 words, but it's completely something distinct from the automated location that you get through Google or Apple, and it's embedded in the phone and still relies on the cell towers and so on. Yes. So PSAPs can be overwhelmed by too many systems. RapidSOS is in over 90% of US PSAPs. Any consideration integrating with them? So yes, we definitely, something that we are considering, we are talking about.
There we go. Sorry about that.
Okay, no problem. So, and already in some CADs, for example, Rapid Deploy is one of the CAD systems that we are already integrated with, and we are integrating and talking to many CAD systems in Rapid Deploy. There we go. So in Rapid Deploy, when you get a call, you will get the RapidSOS information, and together with it, you also get the 3 words. So RapidSOS, for example, comes really with a pretty difficult string of alphanumeric characters that not really easy to communicate over radio, for example. So it's really, What Three Words in that case can be a complement. However, if in that case, the 3 words are as good as the automated location. So for example, in Rapid Deploy, so you get the automated 3 words connected to that RapidSOS information, but you also have the ability to enter a 3-word address that a caller is giving you actively looking at their phone. So you can type it in and it converts directly into coordinates. So surely we are thinking, and hopefully will one day be integrated with RapidSOS, but that doesn't solve the problem that when RapidSOS in that, I do recognize it's maybe not a huge number of cases, but there are some edge cases when the radius that you get or the area is not as precise, especially in rural areas, that it will not be really helpful, right? So alongside, again, it's another tool, and I do get that there are many tools. I think the advantage is that maybe What Three Words, and I'm biased clearly because I know it quite well, is not really difficult. What I showed you in this half an hour is really as much as you need to know. There's nothing else really. So you get 3 words, you type it into the website, you get coordinates if you need to. And again, yeah.
Isabella, this is Matt Gage in Montrose. Can you provide a GIS data layer of your What Three Words squares that we could load into our dispatch map and make it searchable?
Thank you, Matt, for the question. I should have mentioned, yes, we do, besides trying to integrate sometimes painfully with CAD softwares, which again, any software company is a little bit painful to get into their schedules. But yes, we do have plugins, basically locators for most GIS systems, for example, Esri or a bunch of others. So yes, if you do use an Esri-based map or also another GIS-based map, it's very easy. You can still, well, actually, with the API, you can integrate in any map. But if you use Esri or some of the other major GIS softwares, it's really easy because we already created some plugins. So I can send, actually, Daryl, I didn't send that information, so I can send it to you and you can circulate that.
Great, if we could load it into our existing map software and the map search engines, that would be one less window to have to pay attention to, but still take advantage of the tool.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, yes. And then because you'll be able to search, to type it into the search into the search bar, right? You'll be able to type 3 words rather than an address, and they will pinpoint the really the pin on a map. In the same way, if you click on anywhere on the map, you'll be able to see the 3 words.
Fantastic.
Great.
Cool.
Any other questions for Isabella?
I see a message from Karen.
Oh, Karen says RapidSOS is having conversations about integration. And Karen, by the way, is with RapidSOS. I see how this complements other location services. Please send me an email.
If I can get, Daryl, if you can get Karen's email address to me later, that'd be great.
I will do that.
Yeah, and actually, Isabella, we've got we're in contact with your team already, but that was for other agencies that are interested. Always for What3 Words and RapidSOS to both hear what the customers would like to see and how you would like things to be presented. We both need to hear your feedback. So
great, amazing, thank you.
Hi, this is Cheryl.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi. Do we need to sign up for the app?
Nope. So the app, you can sign up for an account, so register with your email address, but you can use the app without signing up for anything. So you just download it and you start using it.
Thank you so much for the call.
Right.
Okay, great.
Any other questions for Isabella?
And the money too. You mentioned it. I see. Okay, so it was Vicky answering. Maybe there's no free.
I'm answering for you because
Okay,
you already addressed it. So
thank you.
Isabella,
All right.
thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. It was very interesting. And you did say that you had the, do you have already created, or would it be something you would create if we asked for, a short training demo like you mentioned? Do you have something like that already that we would be able to access, or?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And I've sent, so in the material that I've sent to Daryl, there are some links already. I'm also in the process of refreshing some of the live webinars because there's been like a little refresh of how the app looks like, and also some of these videos were mentioning 999 right on. So I'm also making these webinars a bit more US relevant, but already a few videos and PDFs and resources are available. So
terrific.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so
Enjoy
much.
the rest of your day.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so up next we've got reports. Starting out with the PUC staff update, Daryl.
Yes, if I can share my screen again. Here we go. All right, so starting with the 911 grant update, there's still a handful of governing bodies that haven't submitted any of their initial paperwork for creating their grant agreement. Most of them are migrating after the first of the year, or their migration dates are currently TBD, so I'm not too worried about it. The couple that are coming up that need to get their grant agreements in, I've been in contact with, so hopefully we'll get that straightened out fairly soon. And starting with this meeting, I don't know if she's on the call. Is Holly Bice on the call? I guess Holly couldn't make it today, but starting now and going forward, I'm going to give Holly some time on the agenda to give any updates on the paperwork side of the 911 grant process, because she's really been handling most of that for me. Thank you very much. And but I think everything is in place right now. We did have a little bit of an issue recently with contracts that had expired, but we got, before CenturyLink was able to provide their invoice to those 911 authorities, but we got approval from the state controller's office to issue new contracts to those 911 authorities. So if you're one of those, you will be contacted and be sent a new contract to sign with a new expiration date, and that should go very smoothly. PUC proceedings, the big one right now obviously is 20M, which is miscellaneous. It's a miscellaneous docket, so it's 20M-0337T, which is the implementation of House Bill 20-1293. And in this, the commission is going to be deciding 3 rates. One is the threshold rate at which the local 911 governing bodies may raise their surcharge without seeking additional approval from the commission. Right now it's 70 cents. In the future, it may be something different depending on what the commission decides. A new statewide 911 surcharge rate, which will be remitted by carriers to the commission and then distributed to local 911 governing bodies through a formula. And a flat wireless prepaid 911 surcharge rate. Currently, we have a percentage rate of 1.4%. Per the new statute, the commission has to set a new rate, which is based on the average of the local rates across the state, plus the new statewide 911 surcharge. Interventions are due by September 16th. You do not have to intervene if you don't wish to. You can submit comments. The order, unfortunately, only gave our physical address for submitting comments, which is very unfortunate. Just a moment. Little frog in my throat. I thought I would mute before I clear my throat in everybody's ears. It is unfortunate because I'm not in the office and nobody's in the office. So I'm going to be going in next week to see if we received any comments by mail. But you can also submit comments online, and there's a link in the standing report document for you to do that. And I would encourage anybody to do that if they wish to submit comments. Becoming a party is an option. You can do that by intervening in the proceeding. But because we're not expecting to have hearings on this matter, it's probably not necessary. You can just submit comments. We do have a temporary rulemaking that has already been approved. These are temporary rules for the implementation of House Bill 1293. These are just the rules that needed to be in place for the commission to have the proceeding above, which is the one I just talked about. We had to have certain rules in place to enable that, so those rules were passed as temporary rules. We will follow that up with a permanent rulemaking, as well as covering everything else in House Bill 1293 that wasn't as time sensitive that can be in a permanent rulemaking. And then finally, we have 19M-0026T. That's the ongoing 911 reliability proceeding. Those meetings are continuing to happen. Right now, the working group is trying to get its hands around how the state 911 surcharge can be leveraged to pay for and improve 911 network diversity across the state. And we're doing that by looking at a particular case study. We're looking specifically at Washington Yuma 911, to be specific, because they are one of the 911 centers that lacks 911 network diversity to their central office. So we're looking at possible solutions to that and what those solutions might cost. So we get a sense of how the process will work going forward, doing a cost-benefit analysis or a pros and cons analysis for the different options for providing 911 network diversity to different PSAPs across the state. There are no FCC proceedings that we're currently tracking. The FCC is going to have, at the September 16th open meeting, however, a notice of inquiry. They're going to be asking how 911 fee diversions have affected 911 system deployments across the country. Colorado's never had a 911 fee diversion. We never will. I'm going to say that optimistically. But the way we have structured the new statewide 911 surcharge, the funds get paid out within 60 days of us receiving them. So there's never a balance built up for the legislature to sweep. And then all of the other funds, of course, for 911 are earmarked for 911, either by sending them directly to the locals through the emergency telephone charge, or there's paid out quickly through the Department of Revenue for the prepaid 911 surcharge. So I don't know that it affects us in any way, but if you do want to file comments with the FCC about 911 fee diversion, there will be an opportunity to do that when they issue their notice of inquiry on September 16th. And because I know there are people on this call that actually follow the FCC proceedings a little closer than I do, I'll pause. And Mary Jane, I know you're one of them that follows those very quickly. Are you aware of any other FCC items or other federal items that we should be talking about?
No, I think that was the main one that I was going to bring up if you didn't. And it's on the September 30th is when the meeting is going to be.
Oh, okay. I misread that. Sorry.
And so it doesn't look like it's going to need to be published in the Federal Register. So once assuming the NOI is approved, which I'm sure it will be, then it's 30 days for comments and 60 for reply. So
Gotcha.
like end of October, end of November.
Good, thank you. I think one area that might concern us is that even though we have never been guilty of 911 fund rating in Colorado, rules that they may try to implement either through FCC rules or through statute may affect Colorado. If those rules are meant to reduce fund rating in other states but still have an effect in Colorado, we're going to want to watch that closely. Like if they try to define what 911 funds can be spent on, despite us having that spelled out in our own statute, that might be an issue. So those are the types of things we're going to want to watch and make sure we stay on top of that. Regarding federal legislation, there's only one change since the last meeting, and that is the introduction of House Bill 2, which is the Invest in America Act. It was introduced on July 20th and received in the Senate. It was actually passed. It was actually introduced before that, but it was passed in the House, and it was introduced in the Senate on July 20th, which was after our last task force meeting. So as I talked about in our last meeting, this bill is a huge bill. It covers a lot of stimulus items. There is a section that is relevant specific to Next Generation 911, and I put a link specifically to an excerpt that has just that section in it, so you don't have to search it because it's a 3,000-page bill, and this is only a 19-page section. Frankly, I don't think we're going to see any movement on this based on the atmosphere in Washington right now, and given that it's so close before an election. But I will be following up on this and making sure that we don't miss any activity with it going forward. And then with that, I would say I can save everything else for the rest of the meeting. And if anybody has any questions, I can answer those now. All right, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Daryl. Up next, we've got BESP report, CenturyLink. Tim, did you have anything?
I think most of what we have, we updated yesterday. Oh, by the way, Tim Goodwin. And I think most of what we have, we updated yesterday in the ESNet user group meeting. We continue to install. I haven't heard, but we were installing and turning up Larimer County last night was the most recent one. And we continue to move forward on that project.
Okay. Any questions for Tim? Okay. Thanks, Tim. Up next, we got BESP report in Toronto. Mary Jane.
Hi, I don't have anything today. Thank you, Vicki.
Okay, thanks, Mary. All right, up next, we've got the agenda committee. Daryl, do you have any updates?
No updates other than the usual plug that if you have an idea for a speaker or a topic to email me. Thank you.
Great. Bylaws, Kimberly. Did I hear, was Kimberly on the call?
She's still muted.
There she is.
I was talking into my mute. Sorry
There
about
you
that.
are.
So no changes, nothing to update the group on. Thank you.
Okay. Legislative Committee, Jackie Louise.
Hi. Daryl gave the update for where the bill is now. Thank you very much.
Okay. Great. Thanks. Equal Access Committee, Cheryl.
Hi. Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, we're unmuted then. Okay.
Yep.
Cheryl wants me to read something for you. She said, report from the Equal Access Subcommittee. This group met August 12th of 2020, and we selected wording for the resolution, and she wants to bring it forward for your comments. It reads, whereas the task force recognizes the potentially life-saving benefits of text to 911, the ease of its use, and the advantages of having alternative means of emergency communication for the whole community, including access to 911 for individuals with accessibility requirements, such as those who are deaf, deafblind, hard of hearing, or have speech disabilities, as well as individuals who may be in domestic violence, hostage, or active shooting situations, and a voice call to 911 cannot be made. That's all one sentence. Number two, she said, Sadie Martinez is working with the governor's office, Maria de Cabrera, to get a training for news stations to have ASL interpreters on screen, especially for breaking news. It is called the Picture-in-Picture for press conferences. Our next Equal Access meeting will be September 23rd at 2 p.m. to 3:30. On a different note, regarding voting, we are, Gil and I are election judges, and we recommend dropping your ballots off at a ballot drop-off box. Do not mail them. Your ballot will go directly to your county elections. Make sure to sign your envelope or it will be tossed, because what they do is they compare your signature on your envelope to your signature that they have on file in the county. You still have the option to vote in person. You would have to relinquish your ballot and your mail-in ballot at that time so that you can vote on the machine. Vote early, but only once. Yeah, as the saying goes, vote early, but not often. So, and just as a note for me, as the election judge, those ballot boxes are monitored 24 hours a day in Colorado. They have cameras on them, and when they are emptied, at least 2 people will empty those drop-off boxes from different parties or one party and an independent, so that it's secure at all times. There are always 2 people that handle these ballots when they go to the county. So just as a side note there. Anyway, that's what Cheryl has. Go ahead.
Great. This is Vicki. Thanks for that. Anybody have any questions for Cheryl?
And this is Daryl. Just incidentally, I have the approval of the proposed language for the amendment to the resolution that we approved at the last meeting under old business. So we can take care of it there. We can take care of it here, Vicki, whichever you prefer.
I figure we'll hit that when we hit old business, and everybody has a chance to roll it around in their head again. So. Anything else for Cheryl? Okay, thanks, Cheryl.
I have sent. Yeah, I have sent out. What's that, Cheryl? Oh. One moment, she has to show me something so that she can pass it on. Technology and disability highlights. Let's see. What else did you want to say? Anything else to that? I included. I'm not getting. Please look at that. You sent something out, so she wants people to look at that. If you have any questions, take a look at what Cheryl sent out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, we're signing off. We have something else we need to do. So if there are no other questions, she will sign off. What's that? Daryl? When I sign off, don't shove me under the bus.
Okay, I promise, Cheryl.
All right, bye.
All right, thank you. Thanks, guys. Up next, we've got the outage committee. Daryl.
I won't spend a lot of time on this. I'll just note that the link, part of the reason I'm not spending a lot of time on this is because we did have 2 presentations today, and I'll make sure we have time for all of it. But the link to the outage committee webpage is in the standing report. And as always, the 10 most recent outages are showing on the outage dashboard. If you have any questions about any of that, please let me know. The outage committee, I don't believe we have any active special investigations at this time. Let me take a look. We do have this one. Yes, we have this one, and we do need to follow up on that one. So we do have one active special investigation right now. That was for an outage in Leadville. So we'll be following up on that one. And other than that, I would be able to answer any questions anyone has.
Great. Anybody have any questions for Daryl? Okay. Thanks, Daryl. So the prepaid and collections committee, Jackie, do you have any update?
I do not. I'm waiting for the rates to be set and how we're going to go about that.
And this is Jeff. I have a bit of information.
Go ahead.
So one of the special projects I've been undertaking this year is trying to automate our collection process for our authority. And I'd reached out to a vendor early on this year, and I have worked with them. They came back with a proposal that we presented to our board. Unfortunately, the cost for their system was pretty astronomical. So we're kind of taking a step back, looking at using our bank for the back end of the collection process, and now we're trying to create an elegant front end for the telephone service providers to, in essence, create a return to accompany the payment that they'll submit by ACH or by credit card. So that work is ongoing. Daryl's been very helpful in reaching out to the NASMA group and pointing me towards some governments that are doing this elsewhere. But to my knowledge, Denver's tax department is the only automated process in the state. If anybody else knows of anybody or anyone that has an elegant system, I would love to hear about it. Back to you, Daryl, or back to you, Vicki.
Yeah, I think that's one of those projects that we definitely need to keep on the forefront. It's still going to be an issue, no matter, even if we get the statewide. In fact, it'll become even that much more important, I imagine. So.
This is Daryl. I have a little bit more on prepaid as well.
Sure.
In the past, the commission was required to provide the distribution formula for the prepaid funds to DOR by November 15th. One of the changes in the legislation was to change that to October 1st, simply so that all of the commission's deadlines were on the same day, which apparently is helpful in some ways to some people. I don't know how it's helpful to me, but that's okay. So I will be getting out the prepaid distribution percentages fairly soon for people to look at and let us know if they have any questions or concerns. Again, this is based on the ALI retrieval reports that we received from CenturyLink. And ALI retrieval can be a little tricky sometimes, depending on how your system is set up and everything else that could affect those numbers. So Make sure to take a look at that when I send it out to you. I'll be sending it to the 911 authority representatives. And so if you're one of those 911 authorities where the PSAP and the authority are kind of the same thing, you might be receiving it. But if you're concerned about what your actual PSAP is going to be receiving, I can send it to you as well. So let me know.
And Daryl, this is Jackie, just to tag on to that. Once we get that, that's probably really a good time to set up a meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Up next, we got the reports committee, Daryl.
No report this time. We do it every other meeting, so the next one will be in November.
Okay. EZNet users group, Kimberly.
So as Tim alluded, we did migrate last night. Our project started at 9 p.m. and we finished just before 3 a.m. And even though it took a while, it's just because we had a lot of SIP sessions and obviously a lot of PSAPs, but it was very successful. So it was a really good project. Our process to migrate over moved us above that 50% mark. So, which is absolutely fantastic. And when you think about the 50% of the project and the PSAPs migrating over, we've got a lot of our large counties, large user base on the new EZNet. And from our call last week, if you weren't able, or not last week, Wednesday, all my days are running together. So we're not having issues on the EZNet. And I think that's one of a really important thing to highlight. The one open ticket that they are researching is isolated to Denver, and CenturyLink is working through that with Denver and also their CPE support group. But for everybody else that has migrated onto the EZNet, we're not tracking tickets, we're not tracking issues, latency, jitter, or any sort of call processing flow. So that's just really essential to highlight, especially with how many calls are being processed through the new EZNet. So really pleased with how the project went. And just from our experience last night, the couple of issues that we did encounter, they were so minor, they were resolved within minutes and we were able to move forward. So the project's going good. I would say we're on track with the 50%, and hopefully the next half will go faster because we won't hopefully run into roadblocks like COVID and shutdowns and all of that. So any questions from any of the PSAPs or authorities about how the project is going?
Over under on Kimberly's sleep total over the last week.
Yeah, I've lost count, but I think I'm in minutes, not hours. So.
Yeah, that would have been my guess.
So, and then just from everybody, we really do need to emphasize, if you're coming up on your cut, start now, plan now, engage your CPE vendor. It was very clear to me last night, without the hours that our dedicated tech had put in prior to our cut, we wouldn't have been so successful. So that close relationship with your CPE support group is going to be absolutely critical before the migration to make sure your CPE is configured correctly for the EZNet. So just want to stress to everybody, start now. And if you have questions, concerns, that's what the user group is here for. Bruce and I are both on the system now, so we can talk to you about experiences. We can bounce things off, help answer questions. So use us and let us help walk along with you to get the rest of this project done. So end of report, Vicki.
Great. That's good.
This is Daryl. I just want to make a quick comment. At the last meeting, I expressed concern about the pace of the migrations as they'd happened up to that point. I will say that concern has been allayed with the quick pace that has happened over the last couple of months. I do have a question for CenturyLink. I know that, as of right now, your schedule is still showing that you're hoping on getting all of these done by March of 2021. Do you think that's still the case? Mr. Goodwin?
I would say that's a Tim question, right?
I was hoping it wasn't. I believe so, although I'm not, directly involved in that pacing or that stuff. I'm a mere lawyer. So.
All right, fair enough. Thank you.
And I think, Daryl, if I can just add a little bit to that from what I learned with working with Cindy on this project from a PACE perspective, a lot of it has to do also with the Entrada resources. So making sure that those resources are good to go, but then also on our end from the CPE perspective, in that we're able to say we're as flexible as we can be in these weeks or these periods of time to make the project happen. So
definitely.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
good news. Yep, good news on our project so far, and hopefully
nice
that.
Nice work. I know a lot of all the effort, the sweat equity you guys have put into this has really made a huge difference in the outcome. And just to echo what Kimberly said, it's incumbent upon the PSAPs to be working with their folks to keep things moving. So thanks, Kimberly. GIS committee, Matt Gage.
So we met in August. During that meeting, Jason Jackson and Rich Johnston of Intrado reprised the NG911 GIS presentation they gave to the task force. There were a lot of GIS folks that were not or are not task force attendees, so that was good for them, I think. The report in the packet is rather lengthy, so I'll just summarize the rest of it, but it is worth a read. It's worth your time. So after the Intrado Q&A, we briefly reviewed a number, and there's quite a few NENA NG911 GIS data standards. Those standards are now posted on the committee's webpage. You can download them from there for reference for your work on preparing your GIS data for geospatial 911. We put together a guidance document that's near the top of that list that is sort of a synopsis of the rest of the standards. Some of those standards are directly related to your preparation of GIS data, and other standards are included there because they have sections that can give you a feel or understanding for how the GIS data will be used for geospatial routing. So to sort of give some background. As a part of this process, I reached out to CenturyLink, and they indicated willingness to eventually migrate Colorado to geospatial 911, but they're not currently actively planning for it. The message I received is that they prefer that the 911 stakeholders push this and decide what they want and when they want it, presumably after as net migrations are complete and everybody's had a chance to catch their breath. So in the meantime, it kind of leaves us to focus on GIS data preparation issues. But some things that we do need to think about, whether it's in the ESINet users group or the 911 task force or elsewhere, is do the stakeholders want to recommend moving forward with an interim form of geospatial 911 service, right? Because it's really still too early to make the jump to full I3 NG911 because the carriers have to have their location information servers stood up and ready to go in order for that to happen. And it's my understanding they're not ready for that. So do we want to do an interim form of some sort of hybrid geospatial 911 service, or do we want to wait? And so there's some other related GIS data services questions to think about for the future. That's it.
Great, thanks, Matt. Does anybody have any questions for Matt?
This is Daryl. Not a question, but I think as you know, this is a question of what we do with the ESINet after it's fully migrated. I think it's a great topic for the ESINet users group. So you know, I'm hoping that you know, once we get closer to the end of the migration process, maybe we can bring Matt in to talk specifically about those options and get some feedback from the users group.
Matt, do you have any idea when the carriers will be ready to move forward with geospatial?
No idea whatsoever.
Joe, between you and me on this call with 57 people on it, I think we're probably going to have to rely on the FCC to step in at some point and set a deadline. That's just my take.
Vicki, this is Monica. In addition to what Matt shared, he provided me a summary of the GIS situation for us to begin sharing on our monthly PSAP roundtable, because really it's going to have to start at the local governments. And we know most of our rural partners are having the largest problem in transitioning their data, or even getting data that they may not already have. So to the point that it's a great ESINet roundtable conversation, I agree wholeheartedly. But at least kicking off some of the information to the PSAP roundtable is, I think, a good kickoff to get the awareness risen for that.
Yeah, the real focus for now needs to be educating local 911 authorities, PSAPs, and their GIS partners, whether they be local GIS departments or vendors. They really need to get on the ball with preparing their data, or if they have data, updating it and maintaining it to the NENA NG911 GIS data standards, so that when the time comes, we're all ready to move at once, if you will.
Yeah.
So this is Ray and Daryl. I respectfully, partially disagree with you. I think one or more of the tier 1 wireless carriers will be able to deliver a next-gen payload with, lat long and XYZ before too long. It may take action by the FCC to get full participation, but I think it's speaking from experience sooner than we might think.
Yeah.
Fair point, Ray. And I guess the question at that point is, are we okay with some of them doing it and not others, or do we want to wait until there's a point where all of them can do it at the same time?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because I'm not even familiar with how that would work. Can you do a hybrid environment when you've got some that are doing geospatial and some that are doing the old-fashioned way, or?
This is Ray. That depends on your core services provider. Absolutely. Okay. Some can, not all.
Interesting.
Yeah, technically speaking, it would be similar to how some PSAPs will be getting SIP and some will be getting converted back to CAMA at the last step.
Got it.
But on the other end.
So I have a question, and I wasn't on the committee, but I do have one of my members on the committee, Ben, Matt, and I'm not sure if you guys discussed what our attempts were. We have a point-based address map we've been preparing for geospatial call routing. So Ben's been focused on preparing our data just to be ready. So we're ready when the carriers are ready. And we've reached out to Intrado to see if they could take our data and run it through their system to let us know if it's ready. And I think that would be a good way perhaps to get started. And I don't know if the committee is looking at that as taking maybe sections of data that is ready, like our county or another area or county, and seeing if we can't get a provider to just give us an idea if we're on track for some of the development of what they're seeing. I've heard, and maybe it is all rumor, that it is being done in places. I mean, I know that it hasn't mandated and the carriers are not committing to that, but I'm hearing that spatial call routing is happening in places. Is that completely off? It's not truly happening?
No, you're correct. Ray again. It is.
So my understanding is that what's happening for geospatial routing is not full I3 based routing with lists and forest guides and all of that, but there are instances where folks are implementing sort of an interim hybrid model for routing. I think South Dakota is a good place to look. Maybe North Dakota. Arizona might be starting it soon. So we have some options to look at in terms of how folks are doing that. Intrado was very careful in their presentation to say how things would work if they become this geospatial services provider in Colorado, as well as additional optional data services they could provide on so for example, statewide data aggregation and QC work for it to function for geospatial routing. But we didn't really talk with them about looking at existing data. I know you and I had talked about this, Kimberly, last year, I think it was, about talking with Intrado, and I think we both got waylaid by other projects. but it's certainly something that we can take up again and sort of have them, ask them, I should say, to sort of look at our data for a use case and see how we're doing.
I would hope that their answer would be yes. I mean, being in our state, being a partner, being a BESP in Colorado, and having that relationship with CenturyLink, I think it'd be to our benefit to at least get an idea. So hopefully the committee can get to that point. I know I would definitely support it, and I know Ben on your committee, his data, he used to work at Intrado, so he would love to assist in that area. He just doesn't know it yet.
So I think the thing that I'm cautious about personally is because we don't have a geospatial 911 services provider selected and in place yet, it feels to me like our primary focus would be the NENA and G911 GIS data standards. You can't go wrong there, but it certainly wouldn't hurt to ask Intrado to take a look as well.
Yeah, I agree, Matt. And since you're the chair of the committee, if you end up going that direction, please know you've got us, and we'll support you with that.
Fantastic.
Great. Anything else for Matt? All right, we got the Colorado Public Safety Broadband update. Ed Mills, is he on the call?
Vicki, if Ed's not here, I can speak just real quick from FirstNet Authority.
Sure.
So last meeting, I spoke for FirstNet, and as a result, I sent out some links, or actually Daryl sent out some links on what were your priorities as public safety and FirstNet matures and moves forward. And I wanted to thank you all for your response. There was about 15 responses, which was pretty significant in the voice of Colorado when you add them together. I want to say thank you very much for sharing your opinion with us. It is used. And last week, I presented to the Public Safety Communications Subcommittee something similar about what do they want to see the state go and how it's supporting it. So we're moving forward with that. And finally, I know that we've talked a lot about how does FirstNet work with the whole PSAPs. And I wanted to let you know that Rapid Deploy is doing a virtual conference, the week of the 14th. And Ed Parkinson, who's the CEO of FirstNet, is on a panel that also with Eddie Reyes, who some of you may know from the communications director from Prince William County in Virginia, and he's also really active in several other organizations. But together they'll be talking about public-private partnerships to drive 911 transformation. And so I just want to let you know in case anybody was interested, and that's all. Thank you.
Terrific. Any questions for them on the broadband update? PSCS report, Deanie.
Yes, actually, I don't have anything additional to add since she just responded to what I was going to say, which is excellent. She did it better than I did. I could have.
Okay. The SWIC report, Glenn Kleitch.
Good morning. Working on finalizing the dates for 3 PSAP cybersecurity workshops that we're putting together through the help of our federal partners with CISA, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. We've set some tentative dates of the afternoon of October 28th and either the morning or afternoon on the 3rd or 4th of November, as well as 3rd on the 17th or 18th of November. These workshops should be about 2.5 to 3 hours long, working with the contractors on that to finalize those dates, and I'll get that out to this group as soon as I can. We should have a report shortly back from CISA outlining their findings that they've done a study in the Hinsdale and Mineral County areas on wireless coverage in that area. They've had some significant loss of service up there. And also wrapping up the 2020 Colorado Field Operations Guide to Interoperable Communications. And we should have that out in the next 30 to 45 days in a print format booklet, as well as available on your device on either the Apple Store or Google Play, much like the NIFOG as far as a resource, but specific to Colorado, pulled from the tactical interoperability plans from each of the 9 all-hazard regions. So that should be end of my report, unless we have any questions.
Any questions for Glenn? All right, thanks, Glenn.
You bet. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Division of Fire Prevention and Control report, Monica.
Thanks, Vicki. I emailed everybody, the committee or the group, the commission finalized our report to the legislature. That was already distributed to them as of August 31st. I sent an email out to this group and to the Resource Center board so that you could review it. There may be a period of time of inactivity, but I spoke to Mike Morgan last week. His intent is once they get some direction from the legislature, I will co-chair the mutual aid component of the recommendation because they really want, fire services really wants to work with our 911 community and how that would look and how we would put that into practice from a mutual aid for a statewide fire services effort. So once I hear from Mike as to when and how that's going to happen, I will be sure and share that information with the group. I don't know if anybody had any questions regarding the report, but I'm happy to answer.
Questions for Monica? That's great. You're getting involved in the committee. That's awesome. All right. Okay, so up next we've got old business, and we're going to go back to the amendment to the resolution 2001, what Cheryl reported back from the committee. Anybody have any questions on that proposed language? So this is basically an adaptation of the language we came up with in the last meeting. Then the committee met and had a couple of updated suggestions regarding some of the accessibility issues. So if I don't have any other comments, if someone can make a motion.
This is Kimberly. I'll make a motion to approve the proposed language change for resolution 20-01.
Thanks, Kimberly. Can I get a second?
This is Mandy. I'll second.
Thanks, Mandy. Got a second. First and a second. Any other discussion on this language? Okay. Anyone opposed, please say nay now. Okay. Amendment passes. All right, up next we've got the new business. Got a discussion regarding the distinction between CenturyLink's activity as a BESP versus an OSP and conditional rerouting. Tim, is that you that's doing this? You're muted.
Sure, I can do that. Daryl, can I present?
Yes.
Okay. Can you let me?
Just click present now at the bottom right of the screen. You should have several options, including sharing a specific window.
All right, very good. Oh, good gravy. Okay. Okay, let's see what we want to do here. All right, am I sharing yet?
You were sharing. Yep.
Okay, we'll start off with, so the question is, when are we acting as a BESP and when are we acting as an OSP, basic emergency service provider, or originating service provider, when we do various kinds of reroutes? We have condition 1, 2, 3, 4 in E911. There's some different terminology that we use in connection with reroutes or abandonments, as they're called in the EZNet/NG911 area context. But they're kind of the same thing. So I thought we'd start with the idea of what is basic emergency service. And so we have that definition in the rules, which hopefully I am sharing. And it talks about the aggregation and transportation of a 911 call. And so the question is, in what capacity are we still doing this aggregation and transportation function? And if we look at, I'm going to stop sharing that. We look at the different kinds of routing. You can, if you look at your the reliability and contingency plan that we file with the commission every year, and this is publicly available. There's some information in it that's confidential, so we file a confidential version. We also file a public version. But if you look at that, it talks about different things. One of the things that talks about the contingency routing, and there's 3 different contingencies that we talk about first. Those relate to problems at the PSAP. So condition 1 is network overflow. So when you have all your trunks are in use and you get another call, what happens then? So everything's working normally, you just have more calls than you have trunks. Condition 2 is when the PSAP's equipment is out of service, but you have dispatchers available to process calls. And so then we have some processes that we engage in to deliver those to a different administrative number or a different PSAP. And then condition 3 is implemented when the PSAP's equipment is totally out of service or the PSAP must be evacuated. So we go to a different administrative number then, or a different location or a different PSAP then. Those are conditions 1, 2, and 3. All of those conditions we are behaving as a BESP because the calls are aggregated at some point and we're delivering them to, whether that's a wireless, VoIP, telephone call, whatever it is, we're aggregating those and delivering those to either the PSAP or an admin number or to a different PSAP. And so in all of those, we're acting as the BESP because it's within that aggregation to PSAP delivery function. They're similar. So here in these next pages or slides, you'll see that there are different diagrams, and this is all in our contingency plan that talk about these different condition 1, 2, and 3 reroutes. We call those and we talk about those differently in connection with EZNet. Those are called abandonments, but it's the same kind of thing, the same kind of functionality, same kind of situation where you have a problem that is at the PSAP. It's a different kind of problem, whether that's an overflow condition or a problem at the PSAP. So we have dynamic routing that you control within the EZNet service that has rules in effect that says when X happens, then we do Y. Sometimes, depending on the issue, that would have to be done manually in conjunction with the PSAP. But still, we're acting in those situations as a BESP, that is after the point of aggregation to the point of delivery to the PSAP or the authority at that DMARC that you guys determine. And so just go through those situations and you'll see the various kinds of things. Now, the more difficult one, and we have pages in our plan, by the way, for either direct SIP converted folks, or here on starting on page 17 of our plan talks about non-direct SIP configurations and how it happens there. But still, all that is the difference in the specific tactics. The general situation is we're directing it to a place that is predetermined either by us or by you or in cooperation with you after the point of aggregation. Condition 4 rerouting is different because condition 4 rerouting only impacts CenturyLink landline customers. And so what we do in condition 4 rerouting in all of these different scenarios that are outlined in our contingency plan, what we do is we cut short, because there's some sort of problem, we cut short the routing of our landline calls to the aggregation point. So they never go to the aggregation point, the selective router or the local network gateway. They'll never get there. Instead, they stay within the wire center, and that area is served by a particular switch, and then never leave that wire center and go to the PSAP that is located in that wire center at an administrative number, usually a 10-digit number. It has to be a 10-digit number. It has to reside within the boundaries of the CO, and it has to be a CenturyLink number. We can't do it to another LAC. So in that instance, they never get to that point of aggregation. We're doing that as a originating service provider. So it depends on the kind of contingency that we're addressing, but because the difference in our different contingencies or conditions for rerouting involve different, access to the point of aggregation. So that's kind of the high-level view of how we do it. We do condition for rerouting when one of our central offices usually is toll isolated, and that can happen for different situations. The most common one is a cable cut. But sometimes if there's so we just had this situation in Arizona, Phoenix central office this last week, a water main right next to the central office broke, failed and flooded our little basement there in the central office, and so we lost SS7, and so without SS7, calls can't get routed, particularly out of the PSAP. So that would be an example of a situation where we were toll isolated, but not because of a cable cut. So in that instance, we did condition for rerouting to the PSAP that was located in that particular wire center. But that is where we're toll isolated. Toll isolated means you can't get to another wire center from the particular wire center. And that's the language that you'll see in the outage reports or anything else is toll isolation. It's kind of an obsolete term, but that's basically what it means, is that instead of so our calls can't get to the selective router from that particular wire center, so we just reroute them inside. So there you go. Any questions?
Hey, Tim, this is Scott Newman from City of Aurora.
Sure.
Question I have, and I had tried working with the specific staff that send out, those periodic requests for updates on the conditional routing. One of the questions I asked is, just using Aurora as an example, we have a huge landmass, and I don't even know how many COs cover our city or where those COs specifically cover. So under some of these conditional routing scenarios, depending on the scenario, it may have to go to Arapahoe County, or it may have to go to Adams County or Denver, et cetera. But because I don't know what geographic area that CO covers, I can't work with those other PSAPs to say, hey, under this conditional routing, you may get our calls, and to therefore be able to plan for it. Or in one of the scenarios, it was actually a fire station that would pick up. But again, we don't know what area would impact that we would then have to project the staffing to go over to that fire station. Is it possible? I know for security reasons you don't disclose the actual location of the CO itself, but be able through a map to just show a CO somewhere in this area covers this boundary. If it's from I-225 east over to Chambers Road and from 6th Avenue south all the way down to Arapahoe, whatever that may be, that would help us plan for, okay, if there's an outage in that area, this is where we need to work with the other PSAPs to notify them that might happen.
Well, the address of the central offices are pretty well. You don't have to work very hard to figure those out on the internet. You can go through the Silly Code and it'll show you. But we are happy to work with y'all. So you should get in contact. So we have folks that are specifically dedicated to these tasks of developing the contingency plan and working with you to make sure you understand the physical boundaries of each wire center And so there's a lot of different terms that are used kind of in overlapping ways in our industry. Wire center is the common parlance for talking about a wire center is to talk about the area that is served by a switch. But really, the wire center is the switch and the building in which that switch resides. And then the wire center serving area is that area that is served out, that's the hub, and then the spoke, or that's the trunk of the tree, and then the branches of the tree grow out from there. And so the wire center serving area is the tree, and the switch or the wire center is the trunk. So we work with you on those, and so you just get in contact with our folks on that. Just work with Wes or Laura Garcia or Sally Backrich, who are the people that work with PSAPs to help them work through those issues so that you have the right rerouting instructions, whether that's on an E911 or a EZNet configuration.
Perfect. Thank you.
And just to add to that, Tim, this is Daryl. I don't remember what year it was, but several years ago, there were a number of outages on the Western Slope, and following that, a number of one of the things that CenturyLink did at that time was to sit down with the specific PSAP managers on the Western Slope and kind of go through their call routing, their local call routing, and where their central offices were and how that works, which I think is a great thing for any PSAP manager to do. So if you're not aware of where the central offices are in your area and where the potential outages could take place, I highly recommend reaching out to CenturyLink and scheduling a meeting to essentially do that, to sit down and go through that, because I think PSAP managers need to know where those points of potential failure are.
Absolutely, Daryl. It's very important. And of course, for a place like Aurora, Scott, you've got multiple counties and multiple wire centers that are involved in the service territory for your city. So it's particularly for a place like like Aurora, want to make sure that we go through that carefully and thoughtfully to make sure that we're prepared for these contingencies.
Yeah, and it would also, to Daryl's point, I think be helpful for Tina, since she's also new managing our PSAP. So Tina and I will work with Wes and see if we can set up such a consultation. Thanks for providing that idea, Daryl. That'd be really good.
Yeah, I will. I don't know if Wes is still on, but I'll make a note to reach out to him to make sure that you guys connect.
Great, thank you.
Hey Scott, this is Wes. I just got back on. I'll touch base with you tomorrow.
Thanks, Wes. I appreciate it.
All right, good. I already met my deliverable.
Okay. Any other questions for Tim?
No questions. I just wanted to thank him for the conversation. This is a piece that we've talked about before, and going through and outlining condition 1, 2, 3, and 4 and how the BESP plays what role in all of those different scenarios, I think is really helpful. It's something that we should and probably need to refer back to often, just to keep everybody refreshed on that. So thanks for doing that, Tim.
Sure.
Great. Okay, up next is the Statewide 911 Authority Association discussion. Jackie Louise and Kimberly Cope.
Good morning again. As most of you know, in the original draft legislation for House Bill 1293, we had tried to include funds through the statewide supplemental surcharge that would help fund the resource center, training programs, public education, and PSAs and that kind of stuff. And because of Tabor, those ideas were removed from our bill. However, we did put in the ability to pay for state and national industry membership fees. So the idea of authority boards banding together has been talked about for numerous years. And one of the ideas we have is to create a membership-based 501c3 to fill this need. And the membership dues could be budget neutral because the cost could be reimbursed from the statewide supplemental. And so what we're looking for is some help and people willing to be able to help. And from there, I'm also going to turn it over to Kimberly for her comments because she spearheaded a lot of these meetings and talks.
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. So many of you have been around for as many years as I have been, which we won't date because that just makes you feel old. But going back to at least 5 years ago, we had statewide 911 Authority Board meetings, and we discussed a concept that we called at the time CCOA, for Colorado Council of Authorities. And the idea behind it was coming together as 911 authorities, knowing that how that would look and how do we form that, we didn't know. We don't have the answers, but just knowing that we had a need to have a collective voice from a 911 authority perspective, representing the PSAPs, and really being able to work together to make decisions, whether it's making decisions about our position on legislation, making decisions about recommendations on using funds, the state 911 surcharge funds, but just really working together collectively. So what we would like to do is put that idea out there that we think we should take maybe an old concept that we worked on about 5 years ago and really start to circulate it again to all of you 911 Authority Board members and PSAPs, and just start thinking, is there merit here? Is there something that we can gather from the work we did a few years ago and bring it back to life? And what would it look like in the state? What value add could we have from forming a collective voice, speaking on behalf of the authorities? And then also, as Jackie pointed out, there is a potential of having revenue that we could then allocate from this new state 911 surcharge, that the authorities could make decisions and then possibly fund different initiatives in Colorado. So I would like to propose and put together, and we'll put out a meeting idea of having a in-person and virtual, for those that would prefer to stay virtual, with a statewide authority board meeting, just to really talk through all this with authority boards. Probably setting something later this fall to allow plenty of time, because we know a lot of authority boards don't meet regularly, so getting an idea in front of them just to come and talk, or again, just to remote in and have a virtual meeting, but just to really explore, one, does this idea have merit? And should we resurrect the bylaws we created and get all of that conversation going again? And if so, what can we all agree on? Is there some format, foundation that we can all agree on to then start moving this forward? So we wanted to put that proposal and that idea out there and let everybody know that we're starting to think about how we can put some of this stuff together and really form a collective voice out of the authorities, and that we would like to have a meeting this fall that LEDA will host. We actually have a new facility. We'd love to invite those up that want to meet in person. But I'm going to throw it over if anybody has any questions about this high-level concept that we're working on. Probably many of you have been around going, yeah, we've heard this many times, but just like the ESIAnet, eventually we get 50% done. So if it percolates long enough, it'll get traction. So so again, just kind of start thinking about that. I don't know if many of you know some of the concepts that Texas has, where they have their COGS, their Council of Governments. What we were thinking could be anything. I mean, everything should be on the table as a potential foundation, but the end goal would be a collective voice that the authorities would have to make decisions in Colorado around 911, or their needs or use of funds to be able to support different programs. So what I will do from that is I will anticipate an email to the authority boards, just introducing some of the concepts and topic and setting a date in the future, not right away, but probably in a couple of months. And hopefully we can host a state 911 authority board meeting.
Thanks, Kimberly.
Hey, Kim, I this is Scott Newman again. I would just say I do think that there's some value of resurrecting it now because, to your point, we didn't have a statewide surcharge before, and now we do, right?
Mhm.
So that in and of itself is a good reason to re-examine that.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. It definitely gives us an idea of we have funds, perhaps. What should we do with them?
Well,
exactly.
And Kimberly, this is Vicki. I would just say the ESInet whole project is kind of a proof of concept of what you can accomplish once everybody gets together in a group and moves forward on that stuff. And I think that there's all kinds of projects that we haven't been able to successfully implement because we don't have that collective group together. So I think this is going to be a really important element of that.
Yeah, I would agree, Vicki. And I think it also shows how even as a collective group, at some point, you need to have some direction and then that consensus with direction. And so far we've done well being able to have Monica doing Resource Center, Jackie and Athena working on legislation and all these subcommittees, and all that would still stay, but just being able to really represent the authority boards. So I think as people start thinking about this, and especially if you've come from other states or as you're in national meetings and you hear what other states are doing and how the authority boards and 911 groups work together, jot those down or email them over. So when we have this meeting, you can come with the what if we did this, or how could we accomplish that? Because that way we can have a very productive, almost a whiteboard session and kind of map some things out.
Fantastic. Anybody else have questions for Kimberly or Jackie? Or comments?
Sounds like a great idea.
Very cool. Well, thanks for your work on this, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Up next, we've got open discussion. Anybody have any items they would like to discuss? Okay, hearing none. We have adjournment and the lunch presentation. You guys want to take a short break and then we'll get started up with Mike Lyons on from Mission Critical Partners? 10 minutes, 5 minutes?
I would say 10.
10 minutes.
Do you want me to call for a motion? Do you want me to make a motion to adjourn, or are we going to adjourn after?
So I'm getting 10 minutes. I don't know, Daryl, do we typically adjourn before we do the lunch presentation or just take a break?
Usually we just kind of adjourn without anybody making a motion to adjourn. It would be better if we do take a motion and make that vote. And I think doing it before the presentation makes sense because a lot of people leave right at the end of the presentation.
Okay. Well, Kimberly, then you want to make a motion?
I make a motion. We adjourn and regroup for those that want to stay in 10 minutes. So 12:10.
Okay, awesome. Can I get a second?
Carl Stevens.
Thanks, Carl. Anybody opposed? All right. Thanks. We'll adjourn for now. We'll meet back up in 10 minutes.
And by the way, I highly encourage everyone to return because cybersecurity at the PSAPs is a very important conversation, and that's what Mike's going to be talking about.
And to piggyback onto what Daryl said, just in front of the cybersecurity workshops that Glenn has gotten for us from CISA, it may prompt you to have some great questions and ideas before you go into those workshops. So, second plug.
All right, see everybody in 10 minutes. Okay. Well, it is 11 after. We have everybody on here, it looks like. All right, Mike, let's just give it another minute to make sure everybody's back with us.
All right, can you hear me all right?
Yep, can hear you just fine.
Frank is on as well. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great.
All right, it's 12 after, so it's a couple of minutes after our 10-minute break. So why don't we go ahead and get started. I don't have an intro for you. I don't know if Daryl, if you do.
I do not, but I'll just say that Mike contacted me wanting to talk about cybersecurity. The cybersecurity is a concern of mine. I know that as we move to the ESINet, CenturyLink is taking care of the cybersecurity on their own network. But I think what we're missing is a coherent, consistent plan for protecting the PSAPs on their own side of the demarcation point. So that's what I asked Michael to focus on today. And Mike, I'll let you finish your own introduction and go forward from there.
Great, thanks very much, Daryl, everybody. Well, it's certainly an pleasure to be able to present today. As a Colorado resident, this is really a topic that's important to me. And being able to be part of this organization as an observer and hopefully as a contributor in the future, these kinds of exchanges of information help a lot, and being able to share what we know and give you some insights into some of the things that I think mission critical partners can contribute. Today, we're going to share some information around cybersecurity. And many of you may know MCP as a consulting company, and we've done projects in the state throughout the last several years. But the company also provides a managed services, what we call lifecycle management offering, which looks at a wide variety of different technology issues that public safety and emergency communication centers often face. And today we're going to be talking about that. And one of the people that from that group that's going to be helping today in the presentation is a colleague, Frank Arrico. And Frank and I will be, sharing some of this information with regards to cybersecurity awareness and some of the things that you might find helpful in prevention. We're all familiar with this idea of viruses. Just the world we live in today is so impacted by, what we understand about viruses. And really the notion is that we have a very similar kind of dynamic that's working right now in our networks and in our infrastructure that's creating havoc and causing problems and challenges in our operations. And as we go through the presentation today, I would just encourage you to recognize that unlike the physical issues that we face with the coronavirus and the pandemic, we have a lot more resources at our disposal to address how to deal with cybersecurity and the infectious sort of approach that bad actors are applying towards our organizations. So I'm going to ask Frank to pick up from here, and let me just kind of give you a quick view of Frank and I, obviously both from MCP, but we look forward to exchanging this information with you, and then also taking your questions as we go along. So Frank, I'm going to turn it over to you and pick up the next slide. Just let me know when you'd like to advance them.
Great. Thank you very much, Mike. And as Mike said, thank you for the opportunity to present today. This topic, based on what's going on, as Mike also mentioned, around the pandemic, on top of what some of the cyber thugs are taking advantage of, is unprecedented. We're going to go through some of the things that are changing in cybersecurity around public safety, some of the additional risks that have come about because of the COVID-19, as also because of some of the technology changes. What are some things that we can do today to impact the cyber posture that each of you have with your PSAPs and involvement with your team? This is a journey, and I'm going to talk about a journey throughout the presentation, but we're taking steps every day to address this concern, and it's going to be part of our environment as long as we're using technology. So the bad guys are adjusting, they're making changes. You're going to see some numbers here in the next few slides that you'll see that there's an increase in activity and some of the risk around what's taking place. And then we're going to get to some things you can start doing on this journey today. Ultimately, where we have all of these systems monitored for cyber risk on a continual basis. We're not there, and we're not close to getting there yet, but there's steps we can take today to improve that. We'll go through a lot of that today. Next slide, please. So we'll talk about what's happening at the national level. The next slide has the news details. It's in the headlines all the time. There are a couple on here that are real recent. For example, Knoxville, the top right, has a recent incident where the city was hit by a ransomware attack and had some significant problems around that. One of the most publicized issues was around Baltimore on the bottom left. That number of 18.2 million is an old number. It's gone up from there. The city chose not to pay the ransom, and they remediated the issue piece by piece, and the costs were extensive with Baltimore. Another one that I'm going to cover in a few slides is the NextGov, right on the bottom right there. The average ransom amount is increasing. They're finding that more and more folks, the bad guys are finding more and more folks are paying or able to pay, and they're increasing their amounts. So the next slide brings in some information regarding the number of attacks. So the bottom bar graph shows you the increase in activity through the end of last year. The plots, the dots along the way, show the ransom amounts of the known issues. The colored ones, which don't show up very good here, are the ones that were actually paid that we know of. This is information that is changing rapidly. This comes from Deloitte, and we got some other information on the next slide. But first, on the top right there, that's showing the increase of the value of the ransom that are known to have been paid. So it's increasing exponentially. The next slide is going to show you the attacks by organization type. And municipality is the top category for ransomware right now. And there's a couple reasons for that. And we all, like I mentioned, are going to be taking steps to address this. But the municipality for ransomware is the highest area by organization. So the next slide is information from the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI. I kept referring to the attacks that we know of. Many attacks, in fact, the information from the FBI is that most attacks are not reported. The attacks on public safety have moved almost exclusively to ransomware. In many cases, and the ones that we've been involved in, the conditions that were exploited were preventable. Some very, very simple things. All of us, the human factor is the primary reason that attacks take place. We don't update our passwords. When we buy a new switch or a new server, We're not changing the default passwords. We're not applying the updates from the manufacturer in a timely fashion to keep that system secure. We're clicking on a link for an email that comes in. All of those, the human factor is the biggest reason. Now, there's lots of other things we can do around the system and the processes and managing those systems, but most attacks are caused by us. The FBI is identifying that the amount of requests for assistance far exceed their ability to interact and help. So they try, and most of the time, unfortunately, it's after the fact of an attack. We obviously have a sharing process here. We're going to share information with you all today about lessons learned from other people that have suffered an attack, and hopefully those will be bits of information we can take forward to your teams, and both from a day-to-day operations perspective, but also from your IT department in helping getting knowledge and understanding out there. It's not about when or if an attack takes place, sorry, it's now when. We should all expect an attack on each of our agency involvements to take place. They're not just going after the larger cities any longer. They're literally going down to very small PSAPs and trying to infiltrate their systems. And then some other trends. It's no longer about just prevention. It's about restoring, and you should make sure that in your processes and COOP and disaster recovery plans that your respond and restore processes are updated. There's a increasing involvement around cybersecurity insurance. So the insurance from a systems perspective to get the needed remediation in place, and not that it's advocated by the FBI or and others, but the insurance around the actual payment of the ransom. Very risky situation around the ransom, because many times the ransom paid and nothing is sent in return. So there are many instances that have been documented that the ransom was supplied and either they asked for more money or only gave a portion of the solution to restore the system and held out for more money. The encouraging side of this is there's more opportunity for us to use some of the advancements in the technology to improve our security. Things like monitoring the systems, multi-factor authentication, backup and restore pricing has come down quite a bit, especially around cloud storage. And password management, there's tools. A lot of folks, having multiple systems to access with different passwords can become problematic, but there are ways for us to better manage that and improve that as that being one of the bigger factors of an attack taking place. You've talked about some EZNet deployment situations in Colorado, and that's going to continue. But as you evolve into that EZNet world, there's many other factors and pieces that are going to be touching that network. And it's that classic weakest link scenario. So as the bad guys continue to improve their methodologies, we have to make sure we keep those EZNets secure and safe. We are seeing increased engagement across the country around the state and federal involvement, whether it's funding. We're working with a couple states on some statewide programs where it started with federal funds and then is managed by the state and being deployed to each of the ECCs. So that's encouraging. And the last slide on trends, the next one is, the bad guys are improving, as I've mentioned a couple times. So they are finding new ways to be successful. COVID-19 is an example. I'm going to go through that a little bit later on another slide. And all these encouraging things are happening at the federal and state level, most public safety entities are still ill-prepared to really deal with the full cyber defense posture that's needed to be as secure as possible. And later on in some of the recommendation slides, we'll talk about some of those things and how you can address those sort of low-hanging fruit options to improve the cyber situation. So, Mike, I don't know if we want to pause real quick and see if there's any initial questions on the state of cybersecurity.
Sure.
or has there been an instance that maybe someone on, in the group that's recently dealt with a ransomware attack that they may want to just identify an example of what took place?
This is Jeff Irvin with the Jefferson County Emergency Communication Authority. I think just yesterday, a bunch of us received an email from an agency that looked official and had a couple links in it to click, and hopefully nobody clicked it, but I would wager that it was likely certainly a phishing attempt, if not a ransomware vector attempt.
Yeah, we're hearing a lot of that across the country, where those kinds of phishing efforts are paying dividends, unfortunately, for these bad actors. But I'd go back to say that you have a really strong ability to reduce your risk profile by just taking some simple steps. And as we go through the presentation, Frank will talk a little bit more about those. So there really is encouraging news here, just following some good best practices.
So quickly, just what the pandemic caused. Sorry, was there a question? So, the pandemic has caused a increase in the risk. Folks working remotely, moving to backup centers that maybe hadn't had an assessment done recently. Personnel, non-essential personnel working from home who have access to the system that maybe aren't in a multi-factor authenticated link to the VPN. Your vendors, many vendors have worked remotely. They're accessing systems remotely. Their systems, when they're accessing your network, could be vulnerable. A lot of changes took place rapidly, and decisions were made on the fly. And so it's important that, as I mentioned earlier, when you have your COOP or your disaster recovery, that you bring these factors in as soon as you're able to. It's the when it happens, are you ready? And are we always going to be 100% ready? No, there's things that change all the time, and the pandemic is a perfect example of that. But it's always better sooner than later to address these additional changes. So it's just a reminder here with the changes that happened around the pandemic. The next slide talks a little bit more about what's happened. The VPN access I mentioned, there's some folks that deployed old laptops, Windows XP I've heard of, Windows 7, that are very serious security risks. And they weren't updated for patching. And so they were put on networks. Single factor authentication. I know for myself, I use dual factor, multi-factor in many of my system access. It is an added, and I'll call it a burden, but it's something that's very needed to secure the system access. And there's tools, especially with our smartphones these days, that we can interact quickly and pre-populating. The text message comes in, it pre-populates, and you can share that information with your computer, and there's other tools that you can use. So the additional links brought online is on the second bullet there. Firewall modifications, new routing devices. Some folks were using consumer-grade routing devices so that folks could access the systems as they expanded maybe to a nearby office, as they split up the PSAP, the dispatchers for spacing. It really has opened up a lot of risk. And we all heard the stories early on back in March and April about the tools, the video sharing tools that had vulnerabilities, and some of the bad guys actually got credentials through that process as folks shared information on open connections. So it all comes part of the process. And if you have questions, if you have concerns, and any of this that we talk about today, Mike, myself, we're here to give you examples or some best next steps on things changing around the pandemic, but it has introduced some significant risk to our processes. Next slide. This is the phishing scam page. There's some examples here. These came from Norton Antivirus around the pandemic. So, you know, especially early on, how to get PPE equipment or what were the cures. Those were some of the early ones. You know, the statistics, everyone wants to get an update on the status in my local area. And these were simple emails for folks to look at and click on. And that does, you know, pose a risk, especially as they start inputting information when it asks for, you know, your name, address, and then they continue that involvement over time to eventually get some other information. A lot of access concerns around this. Folks will use their work email for personal accounts. So some of this would ask folks to log in, and folks that use their work email, unfortunately, many times use their work password, so that it's easy to remember, and that those credentials, when they're spoofed, in this kind of an example, and gathering those details, it provides the bad guys access potential into those secure system with real credentials. So there are a couple tools around phishing. If you don't use them today, there's some automated tools you can set up to reward your team for not clicking and, you know, following process, because obviously it's the bad processes that you're using in a good way that you can reinforce the behavior. So if you have any questions about that, again, let Mike or myself know. Any questions on any of that pandemic related issue? All right, so now we're going to get into some of the recommendations on how to approach cybersecurity. What we're going to talk about here is not what Frank or Mike or MCP feels are important. We're going back to the folks that have set standards. A lot of what we base our approach on this has to do with TFOPA, the Task Force for Optimal PSAP Architecture. There's links here. We're going to share this presentation, so don't worry about writing down the link here. But these are great resources from TFOPA and NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technologies. Both these links are updated, even though some of the dates look a little bit older. This is when they were established, and you can actually utilize the information here as a roadmap for your individual approach to cybersecurity health. And we're going to talk about some of those in a very summary form. All right, so the next slide starts that approach with it, you know, stepping through here. Again, we're going to share these slides. Don't worry about all the different bullets on each one of these. And there's going to be some other tools we're going to talk about later that help you address what's the best next step in each one of these to take. But you first have to identify and discover what's on your network. It's amazing how many of these assessments that we do where the folks are saying, I never knew that all this equipment was on my network. And if you don't know what's on your network, you can't address it. And if it's an older piece of equipment, sometimes a consumer grade printer or someone left a camera plugged in, some of those are very vulnerable. And so that the bad guys know how to hack into those devices that don't get the updates, that have a legacy system on it. That is the weak link in the system. So first, understand what you have in your inventory of equipment and your network. Next, you want to get to assessing and prioritize those. So now that you know what you have, where are my highest risks? And some of these I mentioned already are very simple. Getting a patch update. A lot of folks, you know, dealing with a CAD system, you don't just take the Microsoft update and apply it. I know folks that have done that, and systems down, and you're running around trying to get the system back up just because you applied the update from Microsoft. But working with your vendor, they should be supplying that in as quick a process as possible, so that you are not left vulnerable because of a critical patch that was part of the Microsoft update that they have to strip out and clean up to make sure it's applied appropriately to your CAD system. So, the project plan that you put together and identifying those risks, you involve your vendor in that process. So step number 3, next slide. Implement and operate. So now that you've gotten the understanding of your system, you've assessed it, and now you're going to put those policies and procedures in place with your COOP disaster recovery, your system protection plan, they're listed here. Making sure your personnel receive updates on changes that are being made to make the system more secure. Maintenance, some of the things around, folks don't always equate a generator to cybersecurity. But unfortunately, the bad guys don't just stop with the system. There's been examples where they've gone and impacted the power supplies of some of the PSAPs in conjunction with a cyber attack. So it becomes almost a dual approach to how they can bring down a system or cause havoc and request a ransom or some other information. And part of an assessment should include all of the physical aspects of your system, your building, your controls. Simple things like some PSAPs have found USB ports in their parking lot. I don't know if anyone's had that experience, but someone will pick it up. Hey, I wonder what this USB is all about, and they plug it into a system. And it's actually infecting the system without anybody knowing it. It may include some photos on there, and folks think it's innocent and simple, and next thing you know, it's now infiltrated the system, provided access to the bad guy, and that's the start of the problem. A lot of things too around monitoring we're going to get to, but having that monitoring view, you're able to address this sooner than later. Most of the bad guys sit on a network up to 3 months before any attack takes place. So having these processes and controls in place, make sure you understand the involvement that each part of your personnel have, not just the IT team, not just management, not just dispatch. Everybody has a role to play in this, and that's where the policies and procedures around these come in. Any questions on this? This is a very important step. It's not an easy effort either. I mean, there's a lot that goes into each one of these bullets here to make sure it incorporates not just cybersecurity, but general best practices on how you protect your systems. Mike, anything to add here?
The thing I guess I would add, Frank, is how important it is to communicate with staff and your support groups that are helping maintain the integrity of the network and communications and so on. Being sure that everybody understands their role in helping reduce that cyber profile. And making sure that folks understand what to do when a cyber attack occurs, so that you're not having to necessarily run back to a plan and looking through an index to figure out what the next steps are. Folks should have a good understanding of what they need to be doing and if one of these attacks happen.
Yep. I agree 100%. Okay, so step 4, I mentioned monitoring a couple times. That is the ultimate state. The process doesn't stop when you're monitored, but really that's where everyone would like to get to. It's like having that camera on the entry door. You know what's coming in, you can interact, let them in. You can see that if they got in, you can see with the other cameras where they're going. That's the idea around having them monitored. You have history, you have the understandings, you have the metrics, and you can set some standards to manage that process. It's costly. I mean, it's an added layer of security, but it's very, very important. And then we have evaluate, both for monitor and evaluate, and test and evaluate. This is going to be that journey. You're going to continue to test, whether it's the personnel, your systems. How often do you test your generator? Is it once a week that you're shutting that down and doing a hard reset? How important is that? It's the same thing around cybersecurity. Making sure that the recommendations from NIST and the DHS is once a year you do an assessment. A lot can change in a year. New equipment's brought in, new personnel come in. You may move your center, you may expand it. There's lots of things that can impact the system and create a vulnerability. And so the recommendation is on an annual basis, you do an assessment. And the assessment processes are improving. So they're quicker, They're more cost efficient. They're very thorough. The system information that you get from a full evaluation and assessment is very useful for IT and others to make decisions and look at funding and prepare and budgets. So it's a very important part of the process and steps to be taken. So step 6, is that improve and evolve. So it's an extension of what we just talked about. Policies and procedures are going to change. The bad guys are going to come up with new ways in the next coming weeks and months, unfortunately, on how they're going to address and infiltrate systems. And you're going to maybe need to make adjustments on how you and your teams manage the processes. So, MCP has a lot of information. You're going to see a link later on in my signature file. I have an update where you can get some security information that we send out proactively as we become aware of it. And there's some other tools that we can give you that help you assess where you're at, make immediate adjustments without having to go through any costs around a full assessment or monitoring. So there's some things you can do in the meantime. Okay. All right, some near-term remediation actions. I'm going to, on the first bullet here, I'm going to call it passwords, but really we should all be pass phrases. All right, a password is just not secure enough, and to come up with a word that is 12 characters or more, some folks are actually saying now 15 characters or more. Think of it as a passphrase. So the second bullet, October is almost here! Exclamation point, and all you did was change the O's to zeros and the I's to ones, and it's simple to remember. You don't have to worry about it being, typing wise. You don't have to get the mix of characters. And this is a very secure password. There's tools online that you can go and test your password for how easy it is to hack. And we recommend using those. But you can plug this into a password checker and see how secure it is. And something like this, which seems simple, it doesn't take that long to type because it's a phrase that you're able to say and type quickly. Without having characters that don't mean anything. And again, this is the biggest vulnerability we find when we're doing assessments. Not only using passwords, but posting or sharing passwords. So many folks have passwords on a sticky note on their monitor. And it doesn't take someone who's visiting the center, a vendor that comes through, to glance, get information, and use it. Unfortunately, some of the bad guys use that method to get information. And, you want to make sure that you're not sharing passwords either amongst other people or for different systems. Don't share those same passwords. Secure the in-home internet for folks and use the VPN with multi-factor authentication for sure. And if you needed to deploy Windows 7 or older PCs, try to get those out of use as soon as possible. Those are very vulnerable. Windows or Microsoft has not updated those systems any longer, and the bad guys know it. Training. Are you training on a regular basis? We can help with that. We have some webinars. We have recorded webinars. If you don't have the time to put a training package together, you can actually share the link to our webinars on our website. Again, if you have any questions, Mike and I can walk you through how to get those, and we can set up some time even to do a session like this. A half-hour session goes a long way with a group of folks and learning about what they can do to become more cyber secure. And then the phishing piece, so the example that came out earlier, I mean, a lot of this stuff looks really good. It used to be that you could pick up the bad grammar, or there's some font size that didn't match what you normally get from Amazon or FedEx, but they're looking really good these days, and they've gotten smarter. So use sources. I was just working with another PSAP who they have a process set up that if there is a question, you basically forward the email to someone who does a double check. They'll actually take the time and energy on their staff to do the check, because most likely if you're getting that email, someone else is, and then they can spread the word easier, as opposed to just deleting it. sharing that sometimes helps folks get the information in a more efficient way on what to do or what not to do. Never open attachments from an untrusted source. Don't just click. I mean, some of these seem simple, but again, this is one of the major factors as to why folks are being their systems are being infiltrated. You know, if it looks fishy, it probably is, but that doesn't apply as much anymore. It seems like they're looking more authentic and real these days. So.
And this is Jeff again. I would say, you know, for the one we got yesterday, I called the agency to, you know, before I did anything, and it's always good precaution to make sure you know who it's coming from.
It's worth the phone call. I would highly recommend that if you think it's real, just check. They'll you know, that phone call will clear up a lot of those misunderstandings or making sure that it's real. So we're getting down to the last few minutes. This is an exercise. If we were all together, we would have done this. I would have stood up in front of you all, talked about each one of these. Obviously, timing and this forum doesn't necessarily make it as easy to do, but it's a resource. When you get the presentation, you can go through this. We would have asked you all to identify the protection and response items on the left-hand side and sort of have you prioritize those and where you think they would fall on this grid. What are your top 6 priorities? So number 1 for protection is enforced password policy. Do you have one today? Therefore, it wouldn't be one of your top 6 priorities. But if you didn't have one, I would highly recommend that it is. And then where would it fit in this grid of high to low impact or low to high cost? So being in that top right quadrant is where, for the items that fit there, you would want to address because they're high impact and low cost. And so it's sort of, as we talk through these, there's some important ones on here and some that maybe aren't so important, but long-term would be, and I see we just lost Mike's presentation. Oh, there we go. And then out of those top 6 priority, what would be your next top 3 actions that you would take? So without all the guesswork and going through the exercise, the next slide plots out all of them, and you can use this with your teams as you deal with IT, as you deal with, you know, manager of the dispatch team. Where do these fit? And so the top right, 1, 2, 4, 19, enforced password policy, screen lock settings. So many folks don't set their screens to as they walk away to lock up. And again, folks that don't have a locked screen, that system is vulnerable. You could be logged into a system and someone could make a change to the system. Strong Wi-Fi security. Again, so many times out of the box, default passwords on those Wi-Fi settings, someone could be outside of the facility and accessing your network with a known default password. And then number 19 is data backup. The costs have come down tremendously, and those are important. So just looking at that far top right corner is a great place to start if you don't have those already in place. So as you look through those, we can help on those. This next step is the NIST-based assessment report. It's something that takes an investment about 30 to 40 minutes. Mike's going to click through the next couple screens. It's a series of questions. We get on the phone with you, we ask the questions, and what it does as it gets to this slide here, it gives you the heat map of what should be your top priorities based on your answers. This is not a system or an IT network assessment. This is more of a process and an understandings of where you're at today. It's a great resource. It's a simple process. We offer these complimentary. So Mike, myself, can set up time, go through that. And we provide that report at the end of the conversation. So tops a 45-minute investment. You can get some good next steps on what to do. The dark web was one of the items on the previous slides. If you haven't heard of the dark web, you will. There's many factors outside of just cybersecurity that are impacting folks. There's unfortunate information that's being shared on the dark web. And when it comes to cybersecurity, one of them is your credentials. So we can run a dark web report. It's a snapshot in time. and it will give you information as to what credentials for your domain that are out there today. Again, this is a complimentary quick report that I can run and send off to you. Some folks get very alarmed when they get it. The biggest thing I recommend is if there's information on there, share it with the folks who are on there and have them change their password. That's what the step really needs to be taken. So it's very useful for understanding what vulnerabilities are out there for credentials. And the next slide gives a sample report. So the report actually will show if the actual password is out on the dark web, it'll actually show the first few characters of that password. And many folks, when they see this, they get, like I said, alarmed because it's out there, but the sooner you change the password, the better. And then the CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, part of Department of Homeland Security, has a great site around COVID-19. So you can access that at www.cisa.gov. And there's tips and tricks and information on what's happening with COVID. So I spoke about those complementary options with the dark web scan and cybersecurity assessments. And then there's that link for the sign up on the cybersecurity threat alert. You know, it gets information out to you quickly so you can address it with your team, and it can be part of your weekly or bi-weekly training efforts that you have around what's changing, what's updated. And I think, Mike, that gets us down to the last section, you know, about forging the right approach. You know, this is everybody. This isn't just leadership. This isn't about IT. This is everyone in the organization being a part of this process. I talked about the journey. It's going to be with us as long as we're dealing with IT systems. So if it's not already incorporated into your day-to-day around how to deal with cybersecurity, it should be. Everything that touches that network is in scope. The facility, the people, the processes, it's all part of what we need to address. And then these standards, a lot of smart people coming up with these standards, and we're going to continue to evolve and change, and it's going to be the information that's shared from the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and others on how we can better perform in the public safety IT environment. So that's something that MCP keeps close contact with, and we're adjusting our processes as new information is obtained. So that brings us to the end. Mike, anything I missed?
No, thanks very much, Frank. I thought that was very complete and helpful, and love to hear from everyone on the phone that was able to stay through this, if there are any questions or comments that you'd like to share.
This is Daryl. So we have a real wide variety of how 911 centers are operated throughout the state. Some have very robust IT support and some do not. So specifically for those that don't have a lot of IT support right now and may not, you know, I think for even the ones that do have that support and are aware of these issues, this presentation is a good way to kind of create a checklist of things to make sure that they're covering, so that they don't have any gaps in their support. But for those that don't, do you have any suggestions for how to get started, how to try to get caught up and on the right path for protecting their PSAP and PSAP equipment from intrusion?
Yeah, Daryl, absolutely. I think that NIST-based report that I mentioned, an investment of 35, 45 minutes asking, you know, some simple questions, going through the process, information that you could share with your team quickly. You know, a full assessment, getting into the IT structure, you know, which we do very often. We're doing it all the time. I've been on a couple calls earlier today with PSAPs that we did an assessment with, and sometimes the news and the information isn't really good about where their systems are at. But again, the systems are part of the problem, with the human piece being the biggest part. So if you can address the human piece first, you start down that path, get information gathered around your systems. those will continue to evolve and change, but the people part is important. And those questions, getting those first couple steps in place will be a great place to start. Yeah, and
I would add to that, that, you know, hopefully one of the takeaways from this presentation is the idea that it is a collective effort. It's not enough for the leadership team to understand the sensitivity. This needs to be communicated throughout the organization, throughout the support groups that you know, like IT that manage networks and you know, are so effective in helping. It needs to be sort of a system-wide approach to dealing with it. And to Frank's point, starting with a simple assessment, evaluating where you are today and where your big risks are, probably the best use of time with regards to addressing this early.
And Daryl, this is Jeff. I recall that after 9/11, I don't know whether it's through state Homeland Security or federal, there was a team that was stood up that would offer assistance, come in and do auditing for entities. I don't know if that's still available or something the smaller ECCs might be able to tap for assistance. I'll have to go back and try to, it had some kind of code name. I can't remember if anybody can remember the name of it.
I'm not aware of that, Jeff, and it'd be good if you find anything out, please let me know. I have talked to, I can't remember his name right now, but he's a cyber expert with the Colorado Fusion Center under DHSEM, and they will help individual PSAPs if those PSAPs reach out to them and ask for help, but it's not a specific program that he was aware of anymore. But it, you know, if you do find something, I'd be interested in hearing about it.
Jeff and Vicki, this is Monica. We will be asking that exact question when we have these cybersecurity workshops with because I think they actually still do make that offering. It's just a little low key right now, but I know many centers in our state could benefit from that. So we'll be asking too, Jeff. But if you find out somebody before that, cool.
Will do.
And to that point, I mean, there are, as Frank pointed out, there are free assessments that MCP can help you with as well. So, you know, if you're looking to just get started, that may be another way to get the effort going. And you can reach us at the information that's on the slide here.
Great. Well, Mike and Frank, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very informative. Did I hear that you are going to be sending the slide deck out that we can reference?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate all your time and effort.
Thank you all.
Thanks, guys. Well,
thanks very much.
I don't think we have anything further for the meeting, so we've already adjourned technically. So I think we're good to go. We have a resource center board meeting after this, right?
Yes.
Correct. I would ask that, can we have a 10 or 15 minute transition? I got to get lunch. I got to eat something. So
we'll start back up at 1:15.
Perfect.
Okay. So everyone knows the URL and the number are different for that meeting. I'm going to post them right now in the chat.
Oh, thank you, Daryl. But they are on the Resource Center's calendar if you need it, along with the agenda.
Yep. So see you in 15 minutes.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye all.